Right, and giving the microphone to Florian right now to start the talk. Florian, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Sasha. So welcome everyone to our workshop. I'm going to start the slideshow and share my screen. So please give me the right, Sasha.
Yes, I was right about to do that. Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Here you
are. There you go. So sharing my screen. Okay. So let's start. Let's put this here. Come on. Slideshow. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone. I'm Florian Brönnimann, and I'm going to present you the state of the art of the web development on Windows, and what happened in the mid 2010s, and now it's very easy to get started and to run software just like you were on Linux. So here's the introduction. That's basically the table of contents. We're going to talk about the main conceptual differences between Windows and macOS, and we'll talk about the WSL, what it is, and also show a bit of the history, what led us, because that's the main technology that allows us to develop natively like you're on Linux. And also I'll add some more tip and tricks after that. So first, we have Windows versus macOS. Just to give a bit of context, there are two very different OSs. Actually, it's safe to say that there is nothing in common. You know, not a single command, not a single tool originally is the same. macOS came from a FreeBSD foundation, which has Unix in common. So then again, Linux, which is the operating system on which most web servers and tools were developed and now are deployed. So if you deploy your Ruby on Rails server to production, you will deploy it on a Linux machine, almost guaranteed. And Linux was inspired by Unix. It is somewhat compatible, but it's not the same. And macOS is the same. So Unix was a very old operating system from the late 70s, and it was used as a base for everything that is command line today. So that's typically where the commands like ls to list the files, cd to change directories come from. Windows is not at all the same base. It had its own set of commands. It comes from MS-DOS, and it was kind of made different on purpose because it was a way to lock down users back in the days. And so, of course, because there was a need to port applications from Windows to Linux and other OSs, there is a standard compatibility layer that they've made. But in general, while it's not trivial, but it's relatively easy to adapt command line Linux software to macOS, it's not that easy to adapt Windows, Linux system to, Linux command line applications to Windows. Historically, it's been a pain, and people have hated Windows because they were just doing everything different. And they were not playing fair, basically. They were closing the source. Microsoft was really anti-open source. And when they were using open source software, they were actually making their own version of it, and they will make it just slightly better or slightly different so that it will be compatible, but then it would not be compatible for the full usage of it. Okay, so it will change a bit the protocol, it would add stuff. And since most people were on Windows anyway, because they had the most market share, it made the original protocol unusable because everyone was using the Windows only features, right? So people hated it. It was trying to killing the like Microsoft was trying to kill everything that was open. They wanted to lock users in their own technologies. And of course, as time went, Microsoft started to become better about that. And it changed very much in, let's say, the mid 2010s. And now actually, if you look at GitHub's statistics, Microsoft's employees are by far those who contribute more to open source software. So it has changed, and generally the opinion of people towards Windows has changed, which means that now a lot of software is made for Windows, and we have more compatibility. So yeah, about the inners of Windows, originally everything was written in C. So C, the language C. Maybe, I don't know if people still know this one today, but it's pretty hard to use because you have to manage memory on your own. So every time you create an object, you need to never forget to destroy it. And this is something that web developers just cannot understand how hard it was, because if you forgot to free an object that was not used, then you will leak memory. But if you freed an object that was used by another part of your code, then you would it will crash because the object was not there anymore. And so that was a pain. I learned programming back in the days. And more recently, parts of the system are written using .NET, which is an equivalent to Java if you want. And so because of that, the memory management is a lot safer. This kind of memory issues like in C cannot happen. And these two can interact together. On Mac, though, it's the foundation is Objective-C and has remained this way, but on top there are languages that speak to the same code base, and that is safe in terms of memory. Okay. On the two OSs, Windows or macOS, the command line applications may have things in common because you can also run C or C++ on Mac. You know, compile C applications on Mac. And most of the languages, such as JavaScript, Node, such as Python, Ruby, all these languages, Java, all work on both all OSs, right? So you can just write an application and it will run on every OS. The problem is not really running code, because what the base languages provide is usually libraries to compute stuff, math libraries or string manipulation libraries, but they don't often provide a graphical layer, because it's very hard. Like the graphical layer, what shows the windows, allows you to draw, figures and text on the screen. This is totally different from one platform to the other. It's very different on Windows, on Linux, on macOS, and even on Linux, there's many ways to do all of that. So typically Java by default didn't provide a very primitive way to display windows, and it was not practical, but that was really the first one to provide such capabilities. So you could compile an application and run it on Windows, on Linux, on macOS, and it looked the same. That was a revolution for the time. It was in '95. So nowadays, one of the things we use to avoid these problems is web browser, because the code that you write for your web browser runs the same everywhere. And it's a gift. It's something that we've been waiting for so long. And so most applications now, they can run everywhere. Okay. So in the end, it's just a matter of preference. Mostly graphical open source software tends to be better polished on Windows than on macOS. The reason is because Apple is privileging paid applications and open source players don't necessarily have the funds or don't really like as much to develop the apps on the macOS. I mean, that's one of the reasons. And back in the days, it was the opposite. People hated Windows, so they would create bad open source applications for yeah, barely usable to push people to move to Linux because it was better on it. So now I am going to switch to the concepts. I've drawn this with my iPad. And so the concepts that led to virtualization, which is the fundamental concept that allows you to run, for instance, Linux on macOS or run Linux on Windows. That's also what is at the core of Docker, if you've ever used Docker. I'm going to give you a little history of that. So first you had emulation. So emulation, that was really back in the days when you have a very different system. For instance, this is a, let's say, Game Boy. And you had a game that you can play on this machine, but it has its own CPU, it has its own processor, it has its own graphical processing unit. So it means the way you draw images on it, the way you make things move, the way you make sound is all specific to that system. And what you want to do is play it on your PC, for instance. And so what you want to do is extract the program and interpret the program like an original Game Boy will do, and display it in the same way on your computer. So this is called emulation. It's something very fun to do. I won't go into details. Back in 2006, I did code a Game Boy emulator for my, so it was before the smartphones. I had a Sony Ericsson dumb phone, we call it, but it could run applications in Java. So I made a Game Boy emulator just to play Tetris DX, which was one of the only games you could really play because you had just a circular button, like a row, and one button to really play. So you could not really play jump and runs or platform games, but Tetris was great for it. And it's a really fun thing to do. If anyone is interested, actually, like feel free to let me or the organizers. I could even make a workshop about that. Another way that emerged in the late 80s was to translate a program. So this is typically an Atari ST, which was common in Europe in the 80s, a computer, and you wanted to translate it to another machine. You wanted to run the same programs. And because the processor was the same and some of the hardware was the same, you could basically create a program that translates this into another kind of program. So you can run on, for instance, a PC. And these techniques led to virtualization later. The virtualization is the idea that on a machine that is exactly the same, in this case, we have a PC that uses the same components, the same, Intel processor, the same memory, etc. But you're running another operating system. So in this case, we're running Windows XP in a Windows 7 machine. And that was useful if you wanted to run old programs that were not available on the newer OSs. But as things progressed, we saw other uses for that. And the uses were that actually when back in the days, we had farms of servers, but we realized that if you have, for instance, a database server, then you have a mail server, then you have a web server, and they all use a physical machine. The problem is they don't all use all the power at once. So what if we actually could group all of this server on one machine, a little more powerful machine, and we will have, I think that's what we see here, we will have one big machine with, let's say, a lot of RAM, and you could run a Linux machine inside that uses a bit of RAM, another that uses a little more and less. And in this schema, unfortunately, you had to reserve the hardware resources for the machine. So this Windows XP has a single, let's say you give it 4 GB of RAM. out of your 16, which means you will, on the maximum, be able to run somewhere like 3 of them, right? Because you need to also resolve a little bit. And with that, though, with the new technology that came later, which is called para-virtualization, the idea is actually that instead of just running a machine instead of a machine, the two systems could communicate together. So the Windows XP machine could say, oh, I need memory. And so instead of directly taking the memory, it will ask the host, so the Windows 7 machine in this case, to give it memory. And because of that, when it's finished, it can release the memory. And so because of that, you don't need to give a fixed amount of memory to each machine. So here we can have a case where one machine uses only 2 GB. This one uses a lot, so great, it's got the memory, and this one uses less. And in this case, they can also share the same hardware components, such as the GPU, the graphics card, the LAN adapter. So you will see that you will see that later. We can share all the same resources on one machine, and so you can create maybe 10 machines on one machine with enough RAM, and it's going to be slow if all the machines need a lot of resources at the same time. But if they don't, it's just like you had a big machine for yourself. So this changed a lot how we viewed and how we install machines, data centers, and yeah, servers in general in the globe, on the globe. And that's where comes Hyper-V. Hyper-V is a feature from Windows that's been there for a while. And historically, it was available only in the professional versions of Windows, because you will only use that in a professional server. So it was not available in Windows Home, but back in 2018, I believe, they basically they created this system that allows you to run Linux on Windows, and it's relying on this para-virtualization, on this hypervisor that I showcased you. So what you will see is once you install it on your machine, actually your system will be virtualized, and it's not going to be it's going to be like the two systems run in parallel. But if they're doing nothing, you're not losing any resource. It's extremely efficient. And so it's a bit like it's only one system in the end. You don't really feel like you have two different systems. And so we'll see that and how we interact with the two systems. So yeah, Hyper-V, you have, when you install it, we'll see in just a couple of minutes, you have a lightweight Linux distribution. By default, it's based on Ubuntu because Microsoft is working closely with them. And it's using relatively little resources in comparison. And it's shared. You can access the Linux file system on Windows and vice versa. And you can start Windows processes from Linux and vice versa. You can communicate between them. So it's very powerful. And for experts, actual Linux metadata and is actually supported on Windows too. But it's an option. I don't recommend using it. You can look it up if you want. So workshop time. Yeah, workshop time. So I'm gonna open my Windows machine. So here I am connected to my desktop PC. Okay, so it's no, sorry, it's my how do you do that? Well, it's a remote Microsoft remote desktop. So Windows has a feature where you can log in to a remote machine, and it's been there forever, like almost 30 years now, and it was usable with very low bandwidth back when we had modems and everything. So it's very optimized. You can still use it today. In my case, it means that I can use my Mac, because after that, I'm going to show you things on the Mac. So I want it to keep being on the Mac. and log into my desktop PC, which is under my feet. And so I'm going to show you all of that. And on top of that, I also have a virtual machine. I have a Windows, a fresh Windows. I just installed it. It's really new. There's nothing on it. So I'm going to show you how we install the environment. So right now with Windows, if you open the terminal, it's the command prompt, you won't have your typical, your typical or ls. All of this is not available on Windows because it's batch. It's a very old MS-DOS language, and you don't really want to be using that nowadays. So what we're going to do is we're going to install Linux. So you can open the command prompt as an administrator because we're going to modify the system, and we do WSL install. Don't worry, there is going to be a reference after that. So what it does, it will modify your system so that from now on it becomes kind of a pro system if you want. So it will need a reboot to enable these features. It downloads a special Linux kernel that will run side by side with your Windows kernel. It will be launched only when we actually access the Linux file system or when we launch a Linux process. So by default, it's not running. By default, when you will restart the machine, it's only Windows. Okay, so you will not see a difference. And then it's downloading Ubuntu itself. It's a lighter version, as I said. It's not the full version, but then you can install all the additional packages, just like you were on Linux. So let's just wait for it to download. And I think it will need to reboot. Okay, so we will no, not sudo. It's shut down RT0, I believe. Yeah, I wanna restart the machine. Then it's updating. It's not really a Windows update. It's just adding the components to make that possible. And after that, when it's back, it's going to install the Linux itself. So honestly, because of the time constraints, I won't show you the install. It's just like it's gonna restart and do the installation. So I have a state of this VM just when it's already installed. Okay, just right after that. So I'm going to do this here. This one goes to the trash. And unfortunately, I did so many tests, so my SSD is full, and so the speed drops like crazy. Just a piece of advice: don't fill your SSD. It's not good for it because SSDs have a limited lifespan. You can only write so many times to it, and the more full it is, the more it needs to reuse the same sectors over and over, and so it's not good. Thankfully, after the workshop, I will clean all that up. So now I'm restarting by taking this machine. Oops, no. Nope. I need to rename this here. And I can restart it. Come on, what did you do? By the way, doing a workshop like this is actually pretty risky. You don't realize it, but so many things could go wrong. And oh, looks like I'm lucky. Okay, Great. So that's where you will go. After reboot, you will have this. It's installing. It may take a couple minutes. And then it asks you for a Unix username. So the Unix username is the one on your Linux machine, right? So you have the Windows and you have the Linux running side by side. So in my case, my username is, in this case, it's Florian, right? I can give the same username. Generally better to use a lowercase in Unix. Oops. And I will put a password, very basic. This is not the same password as your machine, right? It's only the password if you're installing stuff, modifying like sudo. And here we are in our Linux now. So this terminal is really not good. We're going to use the Windows terminal. So I'm using a Windows 10. Now with Windows 11, it is bundled by default. It is the default terminal. Here, unfortunately, I need to go and install it. So I'm going to go. I go in the store and I say, you know, in Windows terminal, and I install it. Okay. And here, I don't want to log in. No, I don't want to log in. Wait. Normally I should log in. Okay, I don't want to, so I'm gonna install it offline. I've planned for this to happen. So what I'm going to do is, where is it? Is to take this package. Which one is it? Okay, it still got installed. Okay. Well, you see the difference between Windows and macOS. Like if you insist hard enough on Windows, it still works. On Mac, if it's not in the rules, it just won't work. No, really, I don't really know. I could install without logging in. Well, anyway, it's a good thing. So now I am in the PowerShell, and you can see from here, I can access Ubuntu because it has detected that it's installed. So if I'm coming here, I have access to my Ubuntu system. So with that, if you know on Linux, you know, you do apt install, I don't know, Node.js, I guess there is, I'm not sure. There's not, but you could look up, for instance, you could look up here, Ubuntu, how to install Node.js, and they will, you know, tell you that, and you just follow the same steps. Okay, and exactly the same it's going to be, you know. Oh, apparently I need to update. So I'm not going to show you that right now. This is just to give you an idea, okay, of what you could do. In the meantime, I'm going to show you a bit this terminal. So it still looks pretty bare bone, but it's very nice and very powerful. You have a lot of options. You can choose by default to start Ubuntu. Or, you know, when you open this and you have the parameters, like appearance, you can set the fonts. And finally, you know, you can finally set it to be half transparent. So you have a nice, where is it? Acrylic, I think. You can have the nice, I need to apply. Up, and it's half transparent. I should make it more transparent, I guess, for it to be obvious, but you can do that. And it took some, no, come on. Yeah, it took a lot of time to actually have true transparency. Also on the Windows terminal. Looks very good like this. You can choose, you know, to have more, so where is it? You can have, choose a bit like how text renders, and you can even have the weird terminal effects. I need to apply, otherwise it's weird. Like this, totally useless, but fun. So yeah, that's what we have. Okay, so anyway, that's the idea. With this, you can run everything, and So the same way as on Mac, you will do, brew install something. You can do that the same on Linux. I'm going to show you on my main machine. So I will stop the VM. The VM was just to explain you how to install it and how you do. On this machine, I have my own terminal. So I will show you a bit the differences. Let's expand. And I will need to reboot as this. So let's just wait a little bit. Okay. So we just need to wait a little bit while my desktop computer reboots. And Sasha, may I ask if like people are allowed to interrupt or if they have questions or anything?
Yeah, definitely. We already have a question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, I didn't check it. Okay.
Maybe you see that
Great.
in the chat?
Now I see it. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, can you talk about which OS is best for web development? Well, for development, which OS is best for us to be able to install other OSs in a VM? Okay, so good question. Like all questions that say which one is better, it's hard to give an objective answer. It all depends what you want to do. The reality is both can do the job. Okay, it's down to a matter of your own preferences. Now, that being said, it is a little bit harder to get started on Windows because there is a bit more steps. But once you do that, you truly have a faithful Linux system on your hands. And that can actually be an advantage depending on what you're doing. Because Mac is not exactly Linux, as I've told you. And most of the open source software, or most of the web projects that you're going to work, everyone has a Mac anyway, at least for web development. Almost everyone is using a Mac. They are good machines. They have, especially the laptops, web developers like to work from coffee shops and to be mobile generally, and Macs, especially currently with the M1 chip, are great. They have good battery life. They have great power. And so people, like, it just works for real this time. And so it's easy to get started with it. With Windows, you have a more technical solution, and it's hard to see which one is better. It depends on your criteria. You know, if you have something specific, what kind of development, Mary? What kind of development would you like to do, actually? You can write in the chat. So web and app dev, right? Well, when it comes to app, of course, if you want to write multi-platform apps, you are going to use, I don't know, I assume Electron, or you're going to use, it really depends on what you're doing. There's a way to do .NET for multi-platform applications. If you do so, Windows is going to be better. If you're doing, now it really depends specifically. But in reality, if you just don't want to overthink it, Mac, and you have the money, I would say Mac is just good. What I'm presenting this is more to show people that, oh, it's possible, and all the technical things behind that are very interesting. And so that's why I want to show. And nowadays you do have engineers who develop everything on Windows. That works too. I do, as a matter of fact, myself work in my own job. I do use Windows, and I'm very happy because it's a matter of preference with the UI in my case. It's easier for me to work on multi-screen. With Windows, there's a bit better tools for me, and when I work with 2 or more screens. And I use open source tools like GIMP, and GIMP is a lot better on Windows, for instance. So just for these reasons. You heard that Docker doesn't work well on Windows. I think there was a time where it didn't work well, right? To be honest, no, it works well. So I don't know where that dates from, because it's part of the demo that I will do after that, Docker, and it works. I mean, it's the same. And as a matter of fact, it does use the WSL, so the same Linux VM, as a backend. So in the end, it's the true Docker, the same that will run on Linux. On Mac, the thing it's going to create a VM, a virtual machine. So you're going to have one more layer, which doesn't change anything in reality. It's just slightly less performant, but it doesn't change much. No, in reality, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. I think I know. It used to not work very well because, okay, yeah. So now it's changed. Yeah, because before actually the Docker for Windows was using the Windows file system. Okay, so you had your project. So if you are doing web development, you were doing it on your Windows file system, and Docker was made for a Linux file system, and it's very different without going into details. So it worked pretty well, but you had some issues when you save a file, the machine were not updating it, or it was not notified properly. Stuff like that, very low level issues. And now, in order to not have these issues, the good thing is to put your working copy on the Linux file system. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that now, actually. That's a good question. Thank you. I'm going to keep the chat open here. So I'm back here on my machine. And so here I have git bash, and here I have my Ubuntu. So now, because I'm just starting it for the first time, you see there it took like 3 seconds or so, because it's starting the Linux VM, you know. And that's the same now if I start Docker. The Docker will connect. Of course, it has to update it now, right? Is it? No. So now Docker is starting. And it's connecting to the Linux machine. Okay, it's here. And now, you know, here I'm on the Linux machine. I can show you this. This is the file system. You know, you see it appears as a network share, but actually it's in Linux. So you're communicating directly with the Linux VM, but it's all on the same hard drive. Okay. The reality is that accessing files like from here is extremely fast. It's like a native machine. So if you're going to develop an application, like a web application, the suggestion is to put it inside of here on the Linux file system, so that you have the best performance. Because historically, the Windows file system is not fast. It's not made for that. And I'll show you why. So now if I go to this, I've prepared a simple test. Oop, no, what happened? Okay, great, great. What did I do? What did I do? Yeah, I know. So it was here. So I have this test. So it's anyway test, and I have this thing. So I can do open Visual Code from it. Okay, and the reality is what it's doing. So it's opening my Visual Studio Code on Windows. So that's you know, the Windows application. But it's the files are on, you see, the Linux file system. Okay, and for that to happen, you need to install the so there's an extension. The first time Visual Studio Code will prompt you to download an extension, and then you just have to do that code dot, so the directory where you're opening it. And here we are here. So if I want to, so I have this README that I've written, how to, deploy a Docker Compose machine, I just go into which one is it? Node.js, and I can do Docker Compose up, and that's it. And then it's creating, and you really have the same, like Docker sees Linux. It's a really native version of Docker, and in this it will still be, listed because we have it here. It's now started. It's a MySQL thing, and the good thing is we can actually open. So I could, go here, and I forgot, how do I connect to MySQL? Log into the database would be something like this. Yeah, I can log in, right? And now, show my databases and everything. Now, my container ID is here. Now, the beautiful thing is I can go on the Windows prompt. So with this, I'm on Windows. Okay, I'm not in the Linux machine. That's the native Windows. I'm just running git bash, right? Git for Windows. You probably have used that. And what I can do, so I can, what is the command? The command is, where is it? Docker exec, this. So you have this, and, oh no, this, okay, this. And you can do this, but okay, this will work. That's a bad example. The reality is here you cannot run a Linux command. For instance, if I have apt, right? This so the package manager, I cannot run apt from Windows because on Windows we don't have this command. But I can do wsl apt, and I can run a Linux command from there. And the same way I can be on Linux and I can open a Windows command like explorer.exe in this path, right? And so I'm launching an instance of a Windows or like notepad.exe Windows command with, I think it's temp test readme. I can open this here. So you have the full interaction. So when you use this, you just need to get used, but it's, yeah, that's not really an issue. So that is the thing. So now another thing that I want to show. So this is, you can install apps. So you can do, sudo apt install Python, maybe Python 3, I think there is. No, yeah, it's already there. Maybe you can install Python 2. Yeah, like this, right? And after I do that, that's exactly as if you had a Linux machine. And then I can use my Python here. I guess now it's sending me Python 2, right? So that's what we have. Now, the thing is the Python 2 that I've installed, of course, I have it here too. Okay. But anyway, you cannot, you need to install it. What is on your Windows machine and what is on your Linux machine is different. Okay. And it's good because the great thing about that is you can go and since it's still it's still a virtual machine in a way, you can go and you can take the, I think it's this one. Yeah, you can take the hard drive. This is the hard drive from my Linux distribution right now. I can copy it, back it up, or I can transfer it to a new machine. So if I want to transfer my whole configuration to a new machine, I can just copy this thing. So it's a different machine, but the way you can use it with Visual Studio Code and everything is just like it's on the same system. So it's pretty powerful actually. Once you get used, you get a bit the intricacies. That's why I'm showing it up to you. I think it will talk more to enthusiasts though. So yeah. I'm gonna cut and paste this thing so that it can be useful later. And okay, if you want to install native packages, because here we have the native Linux packages, and that's great. You know, you have the native Python. There's no need to worry. But if you actually wanted to get Python on Windows, because somehow you prefer to have it on Windows, there is a tool that is called Scoop. Scoop. It's a package manager for Windows. So you install this. In this case, I already have it. You install it with this command. And then when you go in your terminal, you can do scoop list. I think that lists everything available. All the search, yeah. Search, and you can say Python, and you see what is available for Python. And you can then install, do scoop install, scoop remove, and you see all of this. And it's exactly the same as if you're using Homebrew. The difference, though, is that this will install native Windows, so not on the Linux machine. Okay, and as I told you, there are ports of pretty much every language, everything on both Windows and Linux. The reason why you might not want to use native Windows is because of the limitations of the file system. Okay, it might be slower, and the Windows file system might not support all the specificities of the Linux file system, you know, like symlinks, some metadata and stuff. So honestly, when a project works natively, great. You know, most of the projects I've worked on work directly. But when people didn't test it, or they only tested it on Mac and Linux, then I'm going to use this one. Okay. So it's really a matter of choice. And Scoop has only open source software. If you want everything, a bit like Homebrew and Cask, for those who know, you can use this package manager. Okay. And there's everything. You can install actually everything, really. There's, you know, even commercial applications you can install just with a command line. So that's another package manager that's very, very practical when you're doing that. Okay, so now I've presented you many concepts, and you might say, okay, why does that have to be so complicated? And it just looks very complicated because I throw everything at once to you right now. The reality is just needs to get used. In reality, installing Homebrew, Xcode, especially the 12 giga install, like and the hour that it takes to install is not necessarily so intuitive either. It's just different. So that's just why I'm showing you all of that. And in the end, it's just a matter of preference. Personally, now I do all my projects in the Ubuntu, so I don't really care about having native tools. As you see, if you need something that is on the Linux system, you can always prefix by WSL. WSL, and you can run everything. Okay. So honestly, no need to worry that much. And I think if I'm gonna quit this one, the memory usage is also very minimal. It's somewhere like south of 500 megabytes that it's using in your memory, so you might want to save that. When nothing is active, it's not even going to consume any CPU because it's not actually a VM in the way it runs. So yeah, really, it's quite a no-brainer, I would say. So yeah. Any questions before I move on? Anything that wasn't clear or you want more info about? Feel free. Feel free. Okay. So let's say the main differences between the two are less and less right now. Okay, it's just if you have a Windows machine, basically that is not too old. Um, it's going to be okay. You can do it on a PC as well. It's just that less people use it, so you might run into maybe some trouble that people don't have. So if you don't feel called to dig a little bit and just be a geek, right, about it, maybe that's not the best choice for you, I would say. Just get a Mac or get a Linux as well. You know, you can get the Linux VM. That's also fun, or dual boot. So directly installing Linux on your PC. That's actually a great experience to do. There's great distributions, and it will help you so much in understanding the intricacies of how computers work. And what you will learn will be helpful in your journey as a developer, like really. And whereas using only native tools like that, or using Mac directly is a bit the safe choice. There's nothing wrong with it, um, but it's not fun. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay. So I want to show you a few tricks. So when you're using Windows and when you're using Mac. So one of the things I really like on Windows is so you have this taskbar, right? And applications are actually numbered. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And the reality is when you press the Windows key, so let me get this here, the keyboard. So when you're using this Windows key and, for instance, one at the same time, it is going to, I should make it smaller. This is made for tablets, by the way. I believe I can resize it, can I? Yeah. Weird. I believe we. Maybe like this. No, the small one. Okay. So when you do, but then it's not full. Okay. Well, I cannot show you what I want to. But when you press Windows 1 or 2, you open the nth application. So this is the sixth one. So if I press Windows and 6, oops, that's the wrong one. Windows 7 in this case, that was the 7th. Then it's opening this window. If I press again, it's minimizing this window, right? So I can switch between one and the other. Windows 3 in my case is the browser. So I have the muscle memory, and I can open quickly. Windows 4 is the terminal. It's always the terminal, and you can move them around if you want to quickly. So if you have one application that you use a lot, you can move it here. And temporarily, you can switch between the windows by using Windows 1. You know, it's changing these windows. You can do Windows Shift 1 to open a new window of that type. Like Windows Shift 3 will open a new window of the browser. Windows Shift 4 will open, a new window of each application. On Mac, you cannot easily do that, unfortunately. And so I'm using a tool because it's very practical. I'm using a tool that's called Better Touch Tool. And this thing is really cool because you can create shortcuts for pretty much everything. Okay, so for instance, the same way as use my, so on Windows, you can use a tool that's called Autohotkey. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to talk about it and put it in the reference slide. And you can program that when you press a certain key, it does something else. And in this case, I've programmed that if I press the, where is it? This button on the trench, it opens this Alt Tab menu, and it's sticky. And with this, I can press, middle button to close a window. I can select. So it's very practical because when I am in, I'm presenting something, I don't need to touch the keyboard to do Alt Tab. And I do the same on macOS using a tool called Which. So it's another tool that I have here. That's the where I'm opening this window list. Because as you know, on macOS, there's only one instance, for multiple windows. Oops, for multiple windows, there's only one icon. So some people find it not very practical that if they have multiple windows, they only have one when they do the command tab, right? So you can use this to solve this issue if you're interested. And the other things is I have shortcuts for everything. You can, Windows 1 is typically opening my Finder. So opening the Finder, a new window here. In every app, you can close the window. So there is, shortcuts everywhere. And so you can, if you often do something like closing the window, you can remember the shortcut. If you press Alt or Option, there is always, you can see a different option. And so you can see what you can do, what is the difference while the menu is open. And if you want to set a custom shortcut for something that doesn't exist, let's say rename. Rename doesn't have a shortcut. Actually, it has one, but it's not shown. You can go here and you can go in the keyboard. You can go in shortcuts and app shortcuts. You can add your own. You can say, okay, in the Finder, oops, not this one, the Finder, if the menu title is rename, and I want to use F9, and you can add it. And next time, if I go here and I select this and I want to rename, it's got this F9 option. Okay, so you can do that for pretty much everything, and it's really practical. And one cool thing with Mac as well is you have this help menu, right? You have this help menu here with a search option. And in this, you can look up for any option, and it shows you where it is. And there is a shortcut to do that. It's Command Shift /. And at any point, you can do that in every application, actually. So, the browser has this. And then I can look for show bookmarks or something. So, yeah, this is the stuff that we do. So I have shortcut for like everything. I have shortcuts to put an app on full screen, to move to another space, to focus on the dock, on focus on the menu bar. You can do all of that, or show the control center like here, or paste, paste things. So this is something also that I highly recommend, a clipboard manager. So I have typically that on Windows. If I'm going to, copy, I want to paste a list of things. So for instance, I'm interested in search. I'm going to copy it and hold, create, config, cache, bucket, or this. Now I have these things. And now when I'm opening this, right, they appear in order. So I can create a document. I can create a document, and actually, if it was in order, it's like this, and paste them like this. And since it's Sublime, and the same with Visual Studio Code, you have shortcuts to, duplicate the cursor. So I could, for instance, do that, add a comma, delete, and then I have, a list, something like that I can do. There's a lot of very powerful things you can do if you have a clipboard manager. The same goes if you're copying images. Copying in images, right? You can paste them later. This with Windows, you can also keep it for later. So typically, when I have something that I'm investigating, I keep a screenshot of what I'm looking for. So in Windows, it's Command, like Windows Shift S to open this dialog, and then you just snip. So yeah, this kind of things you can do. I'm just sharing a few tips and tricks, because it's some very fun things that you can do. So now let me get back to my, oops. Yeah. Also another thing that I like, you see here, I have icons for web apps. Okay. And so what you can do is you can open your browser. You can create, let's say that actually I wanted Chocolatey to be an app, a real app. I can create a shortcut for it and say to open it as a window. So this works with Edge, the default browser on Windows. It works with Chrome. on Mac as well. Then I have an app. So I have an app, and you see it's here. I can pin it to my taskbar. And so when it's closed, I have a quick shortcut, and it's really a window. So it shows as a window, and I can open with middle click. I can open a new one, like every other kind of window. And this is very practical because when I open YouTube, for instance, I can go and look for something like some music, and of course it's gonna show game music mostly. But anyway, when I have something, I can I can quickly use. In this case, I know it's the 10th option, so it's Windows 0 to activate it, so I can hide it, work. And if I suddenly want to open YouTube, I do Command 0, and I can press space to continue. I could also use the media keys, but with that, I can also go back and forth using left and right. And so that's the kind of things I can do. I can do open a new window if I need. So yeah, this kind of things, very practical, that I wanted to show. Yeah, anyway, that's the kind of things. So I'm going to share all about that. Yeah, I'm going to share all about that. There's a lot of small advice, small things that you can do to make your journey more productive and also more fun, actually, you know, along the way. So I guess that is it. Any question?
Thank you so much, Florian. So far, no questions in the chat. I actually expected some kind of arguments, some kind of different arguments, some kind of conflicts between where is the best environment for web development. But that's very interesting that there was no.
You know, the subtitle of my presentation was "Beware the Trolls," something like that. And I removed it because I want to look more professional. And like, if trolls there are, trolls, they will show. So they will show up. So, but honestly, I'm not a fanboy myself, to be honest. I have my preference, and like truly personally, for a desktop PC, I like Windows. I think it's just great for that. There's gaming on it. Even if you're not a gamer, it's really fun to create your own PC. It's really fun to customize it. It's very economic to add your own RAM if you need, or put an extremely fast SSD if you need, or put an extremely good graphics card if you need, or all this kind of stuff, is great. And having a great, like, this PC is old, already a bit old, but it's still decent. It's a nice generation. It's still doing the work. I can even customize it a little bit, make it like undervolt it, and so that it doesn't consume too much. Or it's all my PC is fanless, for instance. So it's for a big PC, it's making no noise at all, and it's still decently powerful. This is the kind of stuff that is fun. And Mac, as for laptops, it's just impossible to do better for now, and until Windows catches up with ARM, which it does, by the way. But it's blocked because of contracts and licensing issues, without going into detail.
Very clear position. Thank you. Are there any contacts that you would like to share? Anything that probably your email or LinkedIn, or how would you like people to reach out to you afterwards?
Exactly. So there is, I share the presentation in Meetup, in the Meetup page. So you will have access to this, and also the comments. I have to add a few, as I mentioned just now. And what I wanted to say is, so it's one thing. Let me. How can I do that? Okay. So just a second. So yeah. So this is my thank you page. So I hope you enjoyed this workshop. I would really love if you have any feedback, any question, even afterwards. Feel free. hit the like and subscribe button. No, there's not that. But anyway, thank you for taking the time to come here, like really. And if you liked it, I want to say that I'm offering a coaching program, and the goal is to bring my my expertise to IT professionals. So either people who are starting in the field, considering it, or who like to step up. You know, I want to help you with any kind of project that you have, how to navigate the world, this world of software development, multidisciplinary. And because now, you know, the demand for programmers is so big, which is a great thing, but it's also making hard to find truly the right thing for you. So, you know, I started as a software engineer in Switzerland. I switched industries multiple times. I started on e-commerce. I developed then tools and SDKs. I then switched to video games. Then to full stack. Now I'm mostly front end and mobile applications. And on top of that, I'm doing mentoring and coaching lately. So I've also lived in Europe, USA, Japan. So I have this multicultural and both multi-professional background. And I know how hard it can be. It took a bit of time for me to find my way. And that's mainly where I want to help people. I want to bring my insights, my experience, and how to better learn new technologies, become passionate about it, and also the social skills, because you know, there's always the stuff like I don't know, charisma, how to be funny, how to network. You have plenty of those, but I found that there's a specific skill set that helps when you're in IT. That's the stuff that truly changed my life, and it allowed me to connect better with the right kind of people, you know, and to find and get opportunities to gain confidence from it, not just have a job, but basically bring a contribution that is closer to what I truly want to do. So and that's everywhere in the world that I've been. So if you feel drawn to that, by any means, you know, I have the Twitter here and the email. So drop me a DM. Feel free. You can scan the QR code. That's the Twitter as well. And we can arrange a free consultation call to help you, you know, get clarity on your goal, how we can be a fit. And so, yeah, definitely do that if you're interested. And if you feel you could gain from my experience. And yeah, the last thing is this. Actually, why did I put this? It's this game. It's an arcade cabinet that was released 5 days shy of my birthday. And I actually did develop a few years ago a game on the App Store that pays a tribute to that old racing game. So you can actually download it by going to this link. So yeah, just that's a part of me. That's a game I really enjoyed a lot. I played a lot. It's amazing because it's actually a bit like what my life has been, because in this game, you start on a certain route and you're along the coasts. I think it's California. And then you can choose left and right at the end of every section. And then you go to another environment. And at the end of every environment, you have another branch. And so in the end, even though you have 5 levels that you're going to play, there is multiple, like 15 possible levels to explore. And in the end, I feel that it's kind of what I've done. And I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, Florian has a special relationship with games. And once in a while, Florian does a workshop with us as well, how to build your first game with JavaScript, also with retro vibes. If you have time, yeah, definitely we will have it probably in a couple of months. And I invite everyone to attend this workshop as well. Very interesting. Thank you so much, Florian. Cool.
Thank you so much, Sasha, for hosting me today. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening for those based in Japan. And yeah, have a great morning or afternoon based in a different time zones. Thank you so much, Florian. As always, take a rest. You deserve it.
You kind of feel the sweat, right? Yeah, it doesn't show, but yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
First time that I do this one, so.
Yeah, that's the first time this kind of workshop, which is really interesting. And a couple of people also asked me if we can share recording after that. So yeah, I will share recording after this workshop in a couple of more days and with you as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
And it's a work in progress. I'm just saying, it's really a work in progress. So if there's anything that reflecting you would have liked to see or to ask, by all means, really contact me. I will, no problem.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, one more time. And yeah, have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.